give us the goods first on Spencer Strider. So he's back and had very, I would say, candid words about how he was pissed about his first start back and his second start of the year and second start since the long surgery. So where are we at with him?
Yeah, I think this is going to be a matter of, in some respects, knocking the rust off. And it's kind of a shame that he worked so hard for a calendar year to get himself back, only to land on the injured list with a separate malady that caused him to sit around. And I say that loosely because obviously he was still working over that time for another month. So I think he's going to kind of have to get back to where he was before the hamstring and then find his way to make his incremental improvements. But there is no two ways about the fact that this is one of the most competitive pitchers, players, I think maybe in any sport for that matter. And he's very candid and he's very direct about his expectations for himself and what he wants to provide to the Atlanta Braves. So I think you heard some of that or read some of that after last night's start. It's kind of a journey throughout the course of coming back from an injury like this to get back to where he wants to get to. But if hard work and talent combined the way that they have for Spencer Strider in the past, I would think that he's going to find his way there. It just might take a little while.
Yeah, and I agree totally with you. This guy's an absolute stud. He's been doing it for a couple of years now. Now, my question along those lines are, how does his teammates perceive him? I mean, he talks this, big thing about, not doing well, which I think is courageous. I think is honesty. I love honesty. Like, how do his teammates take him? And they got to be happy as a clam right now having him back.
No doubt about it. And I actually heard Matt Olson say after a game on the recent homestand or the recent road trip, rather, that like he's one of the leaders of this club. And I think that it's easy to see and easy to understand why, because of who he is and how he approaches the game on and off the field. He has a tremendous respect, I think, for his opportunity and his job each and every time he takes the ball. And that's one of the things that I think makes him so authentic. And I think we all like authenticity. And Spencer Strider is one of those people that doesn't come around too incredibly often. So it's tremendous to have him back in there. But obviously he knows he wants to get himself back to that level physically where he's able to impact the game the way that he's used to doing prior to this most recent elbow surgery.
I think this next streak they have going along here, they got after Washington here, they got San Diego, Philly, and Boston. I feel like this is going to, in my opinion, prove to be where they're at right now during the season. Not saying if they do bad, they're not going to climb back. But this is a big series coming up. Where do you see this Braves team? They're 500 right now. Where do you see this going?
Yeah, and how hard was it to get to 500 when you start the season 0-7? So I think they probably felt behind the eight ball a little bit early on, but were able to keep the confidence that it is a long season, it's a marathon, and that once they were able to get back to some version of full strength, which obviously we can talk about how Ronald Acuna Jr. could factor into that, they were going to play the kind of baseball they expect to. And since starting out 5-13, they pretty much have played at about a 600 clip. That will punch your ticket to the postseason, even if you've had a less than stellar start. And that ultimately is their big goal. But you're going to have to test yourself against the kinds of teams that you're going to see there. They know all about the Padres and the Phillies and clubs like that, especially the last 3 years in October. So even if nobody's looking at it and saying it is, to your point, the end-all be-all, you'd like to measure yourself up against the best and feel like you're on the right path. And I think the Braves have been, but this will be the latest test to kind of see where this version of the Braves is at this point in the season.
Obviously, they don't want to be 500, but they're happy that they're 500 right now based on how it started. But back to Strider, how long do you think the org can continue to lean on him, or how long do you think the org feels like they're fine with some diminished velocity? You saw him get hurt yesterday by breaking balls that you're like, normally those breaking balls are not the ones he's throwing in those locations. And then he got hurt by 95 by Dylan Cruz. He looked more mortal. So how long can the org say, hey, you know what? We know we're not going to get 100% Strider for the first however many starts, but how long is that for the Braves?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think as long as he's competitive and keeping them in games, he will continue to get the opportunity to make those improvements and to get back to where he is. But obviously, to the point of everything that everybody's doing all year long, you want to win. And that's not lost on Spencer Strider either, which is why I think those comments last night, particularly referencing, look, they had to send Bryce Elder out for me to get this chance, and I'm not pitching well. And if I don't pitch well, I don't deserve to be out there. So with that as the backdrop of all of this, if those candid comments are to be taken at face value, which I have no reason to believe they're not, he understands what's at stake if he's not able to make these adjustments. Now, are the days of 97, 98 continually in the zone and this fastball slider behind him? I don't know if I'm prepared to say that, because I think that Spencer wanted to make some improvements to his arsenal that allowed him to be able to be a true pitcher and to have that finesse and to be able to have options to keep hitters off of certain pitches and just evolve, I guess. But at some point, I think you got to go with what works. And he said this before. I talked to him last spring when the curveball was the big conversation. Look, I'm a fastball slider pitcher. I know that, but I do like to have other options. And I think he's trying to work on some of those. But back to the main point, you've got to be able to compete with your best stuff. And I think that Spencer Strider is not quite there in terms of his absolute best and most consistent fastball for sure.
If you're a card collector or you'd like to get into card collecting, may I suggest Arena Club and slab packs, which means that you can rip the packs digitally and, of course, get the card that you want. It's also the most trusted name in the game, and I would rather rip packs these days on my phone than sit next to you and have you grabbing one of my physical packs if I was grabbing one.
Yeah, you don't need me grabbing your packs, because last time you grabbed one, it ended up like this card. So let's not have that, and that's why Arena Club is great. They send them to you in these fancy protectors like this Scout Brown card that we have here, and they'll come safe. They're already graded. Or you could do like I do and just leave my cards in the showroom and never actually see them physically.
Yeah.
But they're safe, protected, and if I want to sell them, I can.
Buy, sell, trade. They offer full transparency, showing every card in the slab pack with the likelihood of pulling each one, so you know exactly what's available before you buy. Get 20% off your first slab pack or card purchase by going to arenaclub.com/FAL and use code FAL.
First, I need to ask a question to set up my next question. It's just yes or no. Okay. Ronald Acuna will not be an MVP caliber player right when he gets back.
I'm going to say no.
Okay, that's fine. And that's fine. I'm not going to hold you to it. If he does awesome, great. Not expecting 70 bags, a million homers, all that stuff yet. With Matt Olson just hitting his 10th home run, I think, last night, is he the biggest key, or is Austin Riley the biggest key in this lineup moving forward the rest of the season?
I think moving forward the rest of the season, if we're putting Acuna off into his own special category, that Matt Olson is probably the most important X factor outside of that. I think we've seen what we need to see from Austin Riley, but I would probably put those guys in a dead heat, a 1A, 1B kind of scenario, if you're talking about the importance of stacking this lineup to do the kind of damage the Braves are accustomed to. But keep in mind what Matt Olson was a couple of years ago, a 50-plus homer hitter who can drive in 140 runs. If that's the ceiling, and maybe it's the outlier, it's still not crazy to think that he can do 75% of that, which would make him, by my simple math here, a 40-homer hitter who could knock in 110 or 120 runs. And that is most definitely what the Braves need. But to drive in those kind of runs, how about having Acuna back at the top of the order? Even if he's not the MVP for his career, per 162, Ronald has averaged 130 runs scored. That's what they need at the top of the order, because their leadoff men are on basing about 270 thus far this year. And Ronald is a marked improvement to that, and I think that makes Olson better, Riley better, Ozuna better, and on down the list.
Has Nick Allen filled in admirably or just filled in for this Braves team?
I think he's filled in admirably. Defensively speaking, he has been above and beyond, I think, anybody's realistic expectations. Even if you kind of knew maybe he was a glove-first infielder, the plays that he makes, the setup that he has, the instincts that he has, I mean, it's been very, very impressive. And he's not going to hit a ton. I think we've kind of seen, what we saw coming in. Maybe there's not much there, though his minor league numbers were encouraging that maybe there was a little something. But I think if the rest of this lineup is hitting, you're pretty happy with what you're getting defensively. But to go back to the conversation of the winter, and really since Dansby Swanson left, are the Braves settled at shortstop? I'm not convinced of that.
Still a lot of question marks, and we're 48 games in, man. We're getting there. It seems like the year is flying right by. My question to you is, I know it's a little far away, but can you see this team during the trade deadline do something here, especially if they're a few games out, or is this a team right now? It's like, we'll see where we go. Hopefully we get everybody back after injuries.
I feel like they're set up to do something at the trade deadline, and there's almost more pressure to do so because they weren't able to accomplish their winter goals. I mean, in no version of the script would I say, well, the Braves looked at their pitching staff and thought they didn't need anything. I think they would have liked to have gotten another high leverage reliever, which was only exacerbated when Joe Jimenez could be out for the year. And I think they would have liked to have added somebody to fortify the rotation and really give them that standout group. So I think that those are still areas that they're going to go out and shop for. Now, getting Strider back and hopefully finding his form again, which is a big part of his return, is an impact arm. There's no question about that. Getting Acuna back, I mean, what club wouldn't like to be looking at players like that and welcoming those guys back in for the run through the dog days of summer and beyond the trade deadline and all the things that are ahead. So I think that they are poised to do something at the trade deadline. And I've heard Alex Anthopoulos talk about it, the math for them, how they look at the luxury tax. And when you get to the trade deadline, you're really only talking about having to pay for a third of that player's salary for the year. So I think that could make them a very intriguing team out there lurking for some big names and some big ads when the trade deadline does get here. And to be frank, they might need them.
Does Craig Kimbrel get more or less than 5 saves on this season for the Atlanta Braves?
I'm going to say less because I do think Raisel Iglesias is capable of figuring it out. So it's kind of out of Craig Kimbrel's hands. Now, he's been trending better in AAA Gwinnett. I think the velocity is finally starting to tick up. He's starting to make back-to-back appearances. I think he could be a factor. I mean, you look at that resume, how could you overlook him or underestimate him? But there were some serious questions at the end of last year about his ability to be that guy in the 9th inning for the final 3 outs, which is a crazy thing to say about someone who's 5th all-time in saves. But I still think it's Iglesias' job to lose. I don't think we've seen the best version of Raisel Iglesias, and I think that those adjustments can and will be made. And the Braves very much need them to because they don't need one more question on top of everything else, which is who's going to get the last 3 outs for us.
Grant, tell me where we're at with Raisel. I mean, he's still pretty consistently giving up runs. I mean, I'm not seeing even in the past, 5-6 appearances now, a lot of clean outings. The ERA is close to 6. What are you seeing, right? I don't see every single appearance. What are you seeing, and why do you think that it can be fixed?
His home run rate, I believe, should normalize. I mean, he's not going to give up 18 or 20 home runs this year, and the Braves certainly aren't going to allow that to happen in the 9th inning, most certainly. So they're going to have to sort that out, and that's the adjustment I think he has to make because last year he allowed 4 homers in roughly 70 innings. He's already allowed, I believe, half a dozen in 20 or thereabouts innings this year, so that rate is off the charts. But he's looked better, I feel like, over the past week or two. He was used infrequently early on. I don't know if that might have kind of gotten him a little bit out of the norm coming out of spring training because he didn't have save opportunities there for about 2 weeks. So that could be part of it, but the stuff's still there. I think he's just made some mistakes. He's hung some pitches, and he hasn't been able to get away with those mistakes. But I haven't noticed anything that makes me feel like Raisel Iglesias looks like a shell of himself or that he's just doesn't have it. I think he's just got to make those adjustments. The Braves believe he can, and he will. But as we all know, Father Time is undefeated, and closers, relievers. I mean, it's volatile. Like you just don't have guys that never run into a bad patch or a bad time in their career where they maybe get taken out of that leverage position. That being said, that would be the most unideal thing to happen, I think, in the Braves bullpen as it's currently constructed.
Hey, everybody. Be sure to like and subscribe for more content.
We're back here every weekday, all year long, so do not miss an episode.
The videos are coming in all day. Here's another video you might enjoy.
Baseball the way it should be covered.